Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. I'm your host, Coach Paul Tripoli, here on Saturday's edition of Coach's Corner. Got a special guest with us today, Coach Mark Gottfried. Coach, so good to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while, but it's great to see you as well.
I followed your career. My gosh, it's. I want to start actually from the beginning. You were actually you played at Cartersville High School in Illinois. And you were born in Crestline, Ohio. Where's Crestline?
Well, first of all, you're going way back. But Crestline, Ohio is probably about an hour north of Columbus. And both of my parents are from north central Ohio. So I was born. And then my dad was a high school basketball coach. So we kept moving around. And then he became a Division III basketball coach. And so anyway, we weren't in one city for very long, but Ohio is kind of where my roots really are.
My gosh. And then you went to Cartersville High School and Carbondale High School, and then UMS right in Mobile. When did you move to Mobile?
So it was prior to my senior year. My dad, Joe Gottfried, got out of coaching and became at the time, the assistant athletic director at the University of South Alabama. So we made the move prior to my senior year and didn't know a soul in the state of Alabama. And I rolled into UMS preparatory school and ended up just having a wonderful, great year. And the guy, it was an all boys school, private school. I was a public school guy my whole life. So all of a sudden I'm in a private school with all boys. And so whole different environment.
Wow. You averaged 22 points a game, 11 rebounds a game in high school. Holy cow. And then you went to Bama. What made you go to Bama? Because you had a great career there. Actually started 98 straight games at Bama. I didn't realize that.
Well, I had a great experience at Alabama. And when I was in high school, I took all my recruiting visits and, all those sorts of things. And at the time, Alabama had a freshman named Enos Watley, maybe the best 1, 2, 3-point guard, probably in the history of the program, to be honest. He was that talented. And so, Wimp Sanderson was the coach, and they recruited me, but it was a little bit kind of half-hearted. And then, I went to Oral Roberts for 1 year, and Enos ended up going in the draft that year, and Alabama was in need of a point guard. And so, anyway, I transferred, and like I said, I just had it was an unbelievable, amazing experience as a player there. We had great teams, played with great teammates. Whip Sanderson was so good as a coach. So nothing but great memories.
Gosh, you did have great teammates. You went to the Sweet 16 3 years in a row, Mark. Buck Johnson, Jimmy Farmer, your buddy I used to see you pal around campus with, Derek McKee. Yeah, you did have some great teammates.
And they were wonderful people too, all those guys. It's interesting as same with you, I'm sure, you know guys as teammates. And then when we get older, you start to really get to know guys as, fathers, and they're working and all those guys we just had a great group of guys. Keith Askins, he's probably been down in Miami with the Heat for probably over 20 something years now as a player and all different roles. And Terry Connor was so good. We just had a lot of fun.
One of my best friends is from Ohio, and he's a big basketball nut, player, coach, referee, just amazing people. The Bows, Chip Bows and Brad Bows, they're from Ohio. But, my dad had a big influence on me. Talk about your dad, Joe, and growing up around basketball all the time, because my dad started our youth basketball program outside Syracuse in Liverpool, New York. So I was a basketball nut growing up.
How about that? Well, I'm sure we share probably some same kind of stories, but, I grew up in a locker room. I was as itty bitty tall. My dad was coaching either high school or small college. And then he went to Southern Illinois as the head coach at, Division I school. But I grew up around it. His brother, Mike Gottfried, who later, coached at Pitt and Kansas and was with ESPN on Saturday nights for about 17, 18 years.
Yep.
I was in the locker rooms with his football teams. And so when I was young, Paul, I never really thought about doing much of anything else. I enjoyed being around teams and, watching those guys coach. And what one advantage for me always was I could, after a game, at least after my dad would settle down a little bit, late in the evenings, I could sit, especially when I got older, I could talk to him about, why were you trying to do this? Or tell me about this, all these different, I had questions and I had somebody that could answer them and from a coach's perspective. So it was really a wonderful way to kind of grow up in sports.
Boy, that is lucky, man. What a blessed life. 1987 you to 95, assistant at UCLA. I got so many questions about this. I'm a big John Wooden fan and probably just as big Bill Walton fan as John Wooden, but I've read all his books. I know you must have spent some time with Coach Wooden. What kind of wisdom did he depart on you?
Paul, I was so lucky. Now, Coach Wooden made everybody feel like, you were his best friend. It was unbelievable. He was generous with his time. But when I first got out to L.A., I was young. I was 88. And Coach Wooden was turning 80 that year. He had a birthday. So I go to this birthday party. We're invited, the coaching staff, and we all come. And I'm looking around the room. It's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Sidney Wicks, Marcus Johnson. I mean, the list is Dick Enberg. Dave Myers. I'm looking at all these guys, and I'm in the room with 30 of the greatest players ever. And I was very fortunate, and I spent a ton of time with him at his house. We'd sit and just talk about leadership and coaching and just so many topics, and he was just amazing. Probably the wisest person I've been around when you're just sitting with him and asking questions. So I cherish those times a lot.
Oh my gosh. Well, lucky, man. I would have spent so much time with him. I love his books. All right, let's talk about that night, 1995. Ed O'Bannon just had a monster game. People remember Tyus Edney's length of the court buzzer beater. I wanted to know, was that play drawn up, or did just Tyus see a lane?
So that play, we were playing in Boise, Idaho. It was a second-round game, and we used to have this drill. It was a 6-second drill we worked on in practice where guys would have to go to the length of the floor one-on-one and try to score. And Tyus was so fast. But the interesting thing about that, Paul, was a year before that, we played against the Fab Five, the Michigan guys. They were all freshmen, and we played them in Tucson in the NCAA tournament, and the score was tied. Tyus stole the ball and went about 60, 70 feet, and at the last second, he tried to pass it to Ed O'Bannon, and they stole the pass, and we ended up going to overtime, and we got beat. Well, now it's a year later. And so I can remember clearly timeout, and it's 4.8 seconds to go. We've got the ball out. We're down 1. And I remember Coach Herrick, Jim Herrick, who I worked for, he just grabbed Tyus by the arm, and he said, I want you to shoot the ball. No matter what, shoot it. No matter what. And so Tyus, I think it kind of gave him a mindset. He was going to, use his speed and –
yeah.
And what happens in sports so many times, one play changes the trajectory for everybody. It's, I became a head coach, other guys became head coaches, guys got drafted, all the things that happen. And that play probably gave us the momentum and catapulted us all the way to where we were good enough to win the national championship.
That's a great point, Coach. There are a few plays that coaches look back on and they can change the trajectory of not only a game, but a season. And Coach Bryant used to say there's, 160 plays in a game, and there's 5 to 7 big plays, only you don't know when they're going to come up. So you got to be ready for all of them. And that's why a well-prepared, well-disciplined team will be ready and not take a play off. Your first head coaching experience, 1995 at Murray State, you guys went 68-24, and in 4 years went to 2 NCAA tournaments. Gosh, you were a good head coach right out the bat. All that experience and leaning on other head coaches, did that help you at Murray State?
It did a lot, Paul. And, Jim Herrick, who I worked for, was great. And, like we talked about, quiet as it's kept, Coach Wooden was just a great resource. I could call him anytime. He'd take my calls. And
wow.
Anyway, it was so amazing. But here's an interesting story, Paul. We won the national championship on a Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
And we flew back to Los Angeles. And then Tuesday, we were on the David Letterman show. Wednesday, they had a parade at Disneyland. Thursday, we threw out the first pitch at Dodger Stadium. And Murray State called. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to leave this. I'm enjoying all this good stuff. But I ended up going in there, and, they kind of recruited me and put it on me a little bit. So it ended up being a great 3 years for me there in Murray, Kentucky.
My gosh, 1998, you get the call we all dream of, going back and coaching at your alma mater. You and my old teammate Shula, Mike Shue. Gosh, did you play golf? How many times you play golf with Shue?
We played a bunch, and a lot of people, it was interesting because our 4 years at Alabama, because I had redshirted 1 year, and I think Mike might have when he was a freshman, but our times at Alabama as athletes were the same. And then later as coaches, we were there, and, with him and his family. And I tell you, we had one great experience, Paul. I'll tell you about a good friend of ours in Birmingham was a member at Augusta National, and he calls and says, Mark, I want you to call your dad, and I'm going to have Mike call his dad, Don Shula, and we're going to take a group of eight guys over to Augusta. Mm-hmm. So we get over to Augusta, and Mike and Don Shula and myself and Joe Gottfried, we had a foursome at Augusta. How about that? How nice was that? And
oh my gosh.
And then I'll tell you this, Paul, here's a great story. So you got to go to dinner at 8:00. You walk in there and all the members have their green jackets on and everyone else has a coat and tie. Yeah. And sitting right behind me, back to back, is Sean Connery. I got over here, I got Jim Baker, who used to be, I think it was Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State. Yeah. But everybody in the room, they wanted to meet Don Shula. And I kept sitting there saying to myself, this tells you how big the NFL is right here. They all wanted to meet Don Shula. So we
did too, man. When I was a little kid growing up in upstate New York, I had Miami Dolphins stuff all over my bedroom, man. And then when Shue got there, I think I was more happy to meet his dad than Shue.
It was so cool, Paul. And how about this? So Don Shula is from, I think the Canton area in Canton, Ohio, somewhere up in there, outside of Cleveland. Yeah. So my dad was, a high school coach for years and years in Ohio. Well, these two guys get on the plane and they start throwing these names out of these old legendary football coaches back in 1960 and 1950, all these guys, and they just had a blast.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I bet that was a joy for your dad and Coach Shula. Oh my gosh. Well, I bet you guys did talk about that. Actually, 2006, I think Shue flew down here in Pensacola. I picked him up at the airport, and he had to say, Trip, because him and Testaverde used to play golf in the off season at Tampa every day. And he said, you're going to be jealous. I got to play Augusta. So then he remembered. Yeah. So Shue remembers that trip pretty well as well. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your teams at Bama. You had some good 2002. You were coach of the year, 27-8, 12-4, Mo Williams, Antoine Petway. You had some good years at Bama, coach. Talk about those players and how they're doing.
Well, it was just really wonderful. Mal Moore, he didn't hire me, but he was the assistant AD, but shortly he became the athletic director a year in. And probably I would tell people, probably one of the best human beings I've ever been around in my life is Mal Moore. And he was amazing. And he really helped me a lot. He really did. And we had really good players. Our philosophy back then, Paul, was we just wanted to control the state and then, maybe reach into Atlanta or Mo Williams from Jackson, Mississippi, or,
right.
It just surround. And we always felt like if we could get the best players, which for the most part we did in Alabama, we were going to be good enough to compete. And, maybe on a given year we can, win an SEC championship and potentially make deep runs. And, we got to the Elite Eight 1 year. We were 40 minutes away from the Final Four.
Yep.
It was a magical run. Antoine Petway on that team kind of led us as a senior. We beat Stanford that year in the second round game. They were the number 1 seed of the ones. They were really good. Then beat Syracuse, who were the defending champs. But we just had a great group of guys: Irwin Dudley, Rod Grizzard, Terrence Mead, Kenny Walker. All these guys, my first kind of big class of kids. And I started them all as freshmen, put them all in there and started 4 freshmen. Took some lumps. We made it to the NIT championship game, but took some lumps along the way. We would be good enough to beat Kentucky, and then we turn around and lose by 25 to Ole Miss. It was one of them with a bunch of freshmen. But good group of guys. And, my 11 years as the head coach, I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Mark, you're one of the only 14 or 15 coaches in the history of college football to beat 2 number 1 ranked teams. I know you took down Duke a couple of times at NC State, had some big wins, went to the Sweet 16. Talk about your years at NC State.
It was a great run, and the first 4 years we had some really good teams. I inherited a group of guys that were actually pretty talented, and they just didn't. They were hungry, but they just didn't have a lot of direction. And so that first year we went to Sweet 16, and anyway, had a great run. I really enjoyed it. One thing about the ACC, I get asked a lot: compare the ACC to the SEC, and the one thing in the ACC that's probably a little different is basketball, for the most part, not every school, but most of the schools, basketball, very similar in the SEC to football. Basketball is kind of the lead dog at, obviously North Carolina and Duke and Virginia. And, you can go through most of the teams in the league. And that was a lot of fun to be at a school where, you're 12, 13 miles away from Duke's campus, probably the same to Chapel Hill. Right there in the triangle. But again, I enjoyed it. I really had a great time and met some wonderful ones still close to me, very, very close friends. So, looking back on it, I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, I'm from Syracuse, and Jimmy Boeheim, who I did play golf with when I was 15 or 16. And you probably know this, but not many people do. He was the golf coach before he was the basketball coach.
How about that?
So, I shot 77, 78. Yeah, he whipped me pretty good. He whipped me pretty good. I think he beat me by like 4 or 5 strokes. So don't play golf with him, and don't be betting against them. They're a basketball school too. I mean, I wanted to go to Syracuse and walked on at Alabama, and my high school coach, George O'Leary, went right up to Syracuse, and I played for him. So every time I have him on my show, I thank him for not taking me to Syracuse.
That's fun. That's great.
I thank him. Thank you for not letting me go to Alabama instead. Oh, my gosh. So I know I talked to you off air. Retirement's kind of like a dirty word for us. I know Coach Brian and my dad both retired and then died at 69 years old shortly after. So I don't think I'm ever going to really retire. No. If the situation's right, do you still got the coaching bug and want to come back?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. I spent a year and a half with the Mavericks. I was scouting for them and involved in the front office. And college, the college coaching and the college game right now isn't as attractive to me as it once was because the combination of the NIL plus the transfer portal at the same time, guys that I know in coaching, they aren't having as much fun as they once did. Like when our age and when we played and coached, and basketball, even for me when I coached at NC State, that month and a half when the season ended was like miserable because you never knew who was going to stay and who's going to leave and transfer. And now it's even worse because guys will 2 months after the last game, they'll just walk in the office and say, or sometimes don't even tell you. They just enter the portal. Yeah. And now with the combination of that with the NIL, and I'm glad for kids that they can, make some money if their name is big enough. I don't like the idea that every kid thinks they should be getting paid. So I don't like that, but I don't think that's what college athletics is all about. So for me, I'm not as excited about that as I once was. And, I've had some opportunities back in the NBA and potentially go overseas and coach. And some of that to me looks a little bit more fun. But so we'll just wait and see.
I agree with you, Coach. that's one reason I don't get back into coaching. But college, it's got to be harder grind. I know it's a grind, and it's nonstop. It's a lot of uncertainties and variables that you have no control over a lot of times. So I can see how it's a lot more difficult now. I want to talk a little bit about Ed O'Bannon, because without Ed O'Bannon, I don't even think any of this would have come about. I think he had courage to do what he did. A lot of the guys now, there's no such thing as walk-ons. Like, for instance, now even walk-ons will get some kind of help with their school. I mean, I paid student loan fees for 10 years after I got out of Alabama.
Yeah.
So
how about that?
So I think it's good. Talk a little bit about Ed O'Bannon, what kind of a guy he is.
Paul, he's probably I hate saying this, but of all the players I ever coached, I'm not sure I've ever coached I've coached some great kids, and they're wonderful people, but Ed's character is off the chart. He there was an old commercial, you and I will remember it. Some of our younger listeners and viewers won't, but when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. And that's what Ed O'Bannon was. Matter of fact, we did at the beginning of COVID, we had a Zoom call where we put every player, coach, manager from that 1995 national championship team on the phone. It was still the same. Whenever Ed talked, everybody got quiet. He was such a great guy. And a lot of people don't know the story. He was sitting there playing a EA Sports, in his living room or somewhere, and playing with his buddies. And they had the 1995 UCLA basketball team. And you had all the images, and, have his number 31. It's a slender black guy, left-handed, just like Ed. But, so one of his buddies said, Ed, how much money do you get off of this? That's obviously you and your team. And Ed said, I don't get anything. And that was kind of the genesis for him to start to begin to say, now, wait a minute here. Everybody's making money. The NCAA, EA Sport, everybody is.
Coaches, everybody.
Everybody. And here we are as players, and we don't get to share in any of that. And I tell people this all the time, Paul, and I've got no Mark Emmert, that the old president, if the NCAA would have shared some of the money years and years ago with some of the student athletes, we'd have never heard of NIL. We would have never heard of it. And they're signing $1 billion, 7-year for $1 billion for a 3-week basketball tournament. And none of that, is really going to the kids. And I think we would see a whole different landscape right now if the NCAA and Mark Emmert would have had a different approach.
Boy, I'm so glad you said that, Coach. You know him so well. I don't know him at all, but all I could read from Ed O'Bannon is courageous guy, and that's exactly what he is. That's amazing to me. You're right. It started with them being selfish over the TV. They didn't want to even when we played, there were only a couple games on TV because they wanted to monopolize it. They were their own worst enemy. They shot themselves in the foot.
Yes, they did.
And now it's gotten out of control, and we still don't have a grip on it yet. Oh gosh, you got 4 boys and a girl. Your oldest boy, Brandon, played tight end at Stanford.
It was a great run. He played 1 year for Jim Harbaugh and then 3 for David Shaw. And but like all of us, we want our kids just to grow up and be great citizens and great people. And 4 of them are in Southern California. I've got one lives in Denver, Colorado, but they all do well. And nice thing for me is I get to be around them a lot. And as we get older, as we all know, we start to cherish those times more and more and more. And so I'm very blessed.
Any grandkids yet, Coach?
I'm praying for some, Paul. I'm ready. I've got 2 that are engaged to be married in September and February, and I'm hoping it's going to come quick. So we'll see.
Dude, they're a joy. They're a joy, Coach. Mark, it was a really pleasure, man. It's great to see you. We had some good times in college, and I appreciate. I followed your career. I didn't want to bug you about tickets or anything, but you're always on my mind. I'm proud of you, man, and we'll keep in touch.
Well, thank you. Hey, you and I could probably have another show where we talk just stories about Brian.
Just stories about Brian Hall.
That's it.
That's true. We could do that. Yeah. All right, buddy. Thanks, man. Have peace. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, bud.
All right.
Oh, man, that was great. Coach Mark Gottfried, a great player. Had set a bunch of school records, 8 threes in one game. I forgot to give him props for that. But, man, he was a great player. He's a really good coach, and I can see why he probably doesn't want to get into coaching anymore. Be retired and just live the rest of your life in California. Not a bad thing. All right. We've listened to these important messages. Thanks for watching Coach's Corner on this Saturday. Next week, Rudy Rudiger. That's right, Rudy Rudiger from the movie Rudy, Notre Dame Walk-On. And we'll have him on the show next week. Have a great sports weekend, everybody. Stay tuned for these great messages.
There's a reason why Hill Kelly in Pensacola is the #1 selling Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram dealer between Jacksonville and New Orleans. While other dealers have taken advantage of a competitive market with higher prices, Hill Kelly has discounted prices to the lowest of the year. And Hill Kelly in Pensacola won't surprise you with excessive charges beyond the selling price. Come see why people from Milton, Pace, Foley, Bama and Daphne, Gulf Shores, Mobile, and beyond are driving to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to buy their next new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram. At Hill Kelly, the bottom line price and your satisfaction are what really matter. So before you sign, check the bottom line and make the trip to Hill Kelly in Pensacola to see what true local ownership can do for you. At Hill Kelly Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Highway 29 in Car City, Pensacola. Or shop online 24/7 at hillkellydodge.com. When it comes to bottom line pricing, nobody beats a Hill Kelly deal. Nobody.
Hey, Bill, some game, huh?
I haven't really noticed, Paul.
What? The biggest game of the year?
I've been looking over my insurance. Talk about problems I'm trying to figure out.
Well, do what I did. Call the Seiler Agency. They showed me what I needed and what I didn't. They even saved me money. Now, instead of worrying about my insurance, I can worry about the big game.
Contact the Seiler Agency at 476-7443 for all of your insurance needs. Your independent agent for home, auto, boat, RV, commercial, general liability, life, and sound investment strategies. Call 476-7443 today.
Are you riding around in a filthy vehicle? Dirty car no more. Visit Ronnie's Car Wash today to get it shining in no time. They have 3 convenient locations with another coming soon. The unlimited monthly wash packages start as low as $14.95 per month with free vacuums, multi-purpose spray, and towels. Visit them in Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, and soon Crestview. Don't wait, wash today. Be sure to see Ronnie's Car Wash on Facebook to see the latest specials and discounts. You'll be riding and shining in no time.
Step One works so hard to get you in the perfect car.
Looking for a better car buying experience? With the Step One Advantage from Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola, receive no-hassle market-based pricing or incentives by pre-ordering. Looking to sell or trade? Our dedicated team will even come to you. Plus, every vehicle sold at Step One supports local charities right in your neighborhood. Experience the Step One Advantage at Buick GMC, Fort Walton Beach, and Pensacola today.
75 years of service and high-tech today. It's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348. High-tech is a term often applied to advanced services and products in today's marketplace. And today, glass is much more than a simple painted brittle, see-through stuff we hit baseballs through when we were kids. Glass is now a product with unique flexibility in both performance and application. And Pensacola Glass Company is growing right along. That's Pensacola Glass Company at 433-8348.
Did you know there's a place where you can get good neighbor service and surprisingly great rates on your home and auto insurance? Yep, and that place is, ta-da, State Farm. Here's the deal. State Farm agent Will Rentschler is your go-to agent in Pensacola, Florida for the service you deserve at the price that you want. So stop shopping around. State Farm agent Will Rentschler has you covered. Call 850-433-4678 for your surprisingly great rates today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Legal disclaimer, individual premiums will vary by customer. All applicants subject to State Farm underwriting requirements.
For over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352. 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.